This is a very personal story for me. You can be skeptical if you'd like. I'm just recounting my experiences. When I was about 13, I had been molested by my best friend, a family friend who was about 5 years older than me. My mother had abandoned my sister and myself about 3 times, and at this point had decided to abduct my sister and I from our father. I hadn't told anyone what happened to me, and it sent me into a deep depression. We lived in homeless shelters, and I began to sleep at odd hours of the day. I stayed up late into the night watching children's movies as I tried to get over my emotions. The particular shelter I was staying in had once been an asylum for clinically insane patients. One night, while I was awake late as usual, I felt like I was being watched. I was so on edge, I had to stop watching my movie to try to figure out what it was that had me so freaked out. I had always been sensitive to spirits. They were always a positive force in my life, something I had never feared until this moment. I felt someone put their arms around me and I jumped. Not a moment later, I felt something brush against my privates, and I ran into my bedroom and crawled into my bed, closing my eyes and hoping to fall asleep before whatever it was got to me. This was the start of over a year of hell. I continued moving shelters, but whatever had touched me that night followed me. Later, I realized it was probably feeding off of my negative energy. Most people think poltergeists feed off of just anger, but they can also feed off of sadness as well. I would see it in hallways, looming over me like a dark cloud. It always terrified me, and I didn't scare easy. Eventually, we moved into a halfway apartment complex, and I got my own room, with sliding mirror closet doors. I hated those doors. I hate them to this day. One night, as I lay in bed, I saw a girl hanging herself from the ceiling of my room, her eyes looking straight into mine. I was terrified. I would later come to assume that this was the poltergeist's way of encouraging me to kill myself. I became so distraught, I looked at every opportunity to kill myself, and I was terrified because these thoughts were not my own. This thing became so powerful, it began to possess a close friend of mine. It would be late at night, and I would wake to find him gone from my room. I would go to the living room only to find him, eyes white, staring into the static of a television. He would frequently stare at the walls around my house, and I started to avoid having him come over. Eventually, I decided to leave my mother's home to escape my crippling depression. If you don't know anything about aura colors, red auras tend to displace spirits. They are like a natural dampening field. My father is a red aura, and as such, I thought being in his home might also help me drive this poltergeist out. It didn't really help. This thing was latched deep into my person. It chased me in my waking and sleeping life. Eventually, I had to pretend that nothing was there. Being scared of it gave it power over me, and it fed more into the poltergeist's hold on me. Eventually, I began to notice it less, until it finally became nothing more than a terrifying memory. To this day, when I am suffering from depression, or experiencing suicidal thoughts, I am terrified that those thoughts are not my own, and that it's come back to finish the job.